It is Sunday, the 29th of April, 2018, and this is your EV News Daily. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. A very warm welcome from London in the UK. My name is Martin Lee, and I go through every EV article online, so you don't have to. Coming up on the show today, Tesla officially responds to a teardown, and the VP of Byton Design speaks out. But first of all, Volvo's sister brand, Lynk&Co, has announced that the crossovers they're going to be building in Belgium to serve the European market are not going to be full BEVs, but they're going to be hybrids. Well, Lynk&Co wants to attract young urban people with a subscription program, much like the other end of Volvo's pricing structure, Polestar 1, a slightly different expensive subscription to take out on that. It allows customers to rent a car for a month or a few years, and you can change your car for a different model up to 4 times a year, says FleetEurope. Well, Matt Fagerhag? No, God, I've got that so wrong, haven't I? Fagerhag. The vice president of Geely said this from the very beginning of the CMA's development: the flexibility to support future powertrain technologies like plug-in hybrid EVs, hybrid electric vehicles, full BEVs, mild hybrids, and even traditional fuel was part of their vision. Well, the new energy plan for Lynk&Co will be implemented in stages with the goal of following plug-in hybrids and then full BEV. Well, moving on, and Tesla has officially responded to a teardown. Munro & Associates recently talked about the Tesla Model 3 in an Autoline After Hours video. If you are listening to us outside of the US, by the way, I've been watching these Autoline videos for years and years and years now. Very well-established, brilliant set of journalists and shows you can watch on YouTube. And the After Hours is a nice kind of not round table, but round sofa discussion program, if you like. And appearing on that was Mr. Munro, and was very, very impressed with Tesla's battery pack. Industry leading, he said. If Tesla had ensured that its build quality was as good as its technology, it would wipe the floor with everybody. And then following that, we saw Elon's leaked email talking about how quality is the new focus now that the numbers are increasing pretty quickly, and that if someone's panel gaps are too big, it's because the measuring device they're using is wrong, not Tesla. Well, Mr. Munro wasn't totally complimentary. He initially said that the Model 3 build quality, when they first looked at the Model 3 a long time ago, wasn't as good as it should have been. The frame also, he said, was too heavy, in his opinion, and they should have followed the likes of BMW with the i3 of having carbon fibre to save weight. Yeah, the thing is, the i3 is a really expensive car for what it is, and Model 3 is eventually a $35,000 mass market mainstream EV. I mean, he gets that, right? Surely. You can't start making $35,000 cars out of all carbon fibre bits. Anyway, moving on. He really hated having no mechanical latches on the doors, the rear doors inside to get out of the Model 3. And on that last point, though, if you go back and watch that original video when he was complaining about, I can't open the door, I don't know how to open the door, he did sound a little bit like an angry old man who doesn't like technology. Obviously, super expert on cars, and full respect to him. But that particular video, he was just saying, I can't get out the car. And you're like, yeah, you sound like the kind of person whose kids have to come round to set up their Wi-Fi. Yeah, not good. Anyway, moving on. Tesla has officially responded in a statement. They say this, and I quote, "The primary car evaluated by Munro was built back in 2017. We have significantly refined our production processes since then. And while there are always room for improvement, our data already shows that the Model 3 quality is rapidly getting better." Tesla continue, "Since we began shipping Model 3 last year, we've been very focused on refining and tuning both part and body manufacturing processes. The result being that the standard deviation of all gaps and offsets across the entire car has improved on average by nearly 40%, with particular gap improvements visible in the area of the trunk, rear lamps and rear quarter panel. Well, today Model 3 panel gaps are competitive with Audi, BMW and Mercedes models. But in the spirit of relentless improvement, Tesla say we are working to make them even tighter." Well, moving on. And recently at the Milan Design Week, Byton showed off their EV SUV concept. Byton's VP of Design, Benoit Jacob, is the former VP of Design over at BMW. And during his time at BMW, Jacob was the head of various projects, including the car we've just mentioned, the i3 and the i8 EV as well. Well, now he's moved to Byton and he's responsible for building the concept. He says this, and I quote, "I think the ability to update software, functionality, and things like that will be on a day-to-day basis. And this, of course, is something that we have to integrate as technology into the car." End quote. Well, it's a thing that Tesla owners have become used to now, and it blows the mind of anybody else who gets this. Yeah, software over-the-air updates. It's nothing new. Byton's SUV is going to be available in China towards the end of 2019 and in the US and Europe in 2020. The price tag starts at $45,000. Well, the whole evangelist label, you know, people calling themselves evangelists, EV evangelists, yeah, it was kind of clever once, but maybe a little bit overdone now. That's exactly what dealers need, though. According to a new report, they need people out front who know all about EVs. Have you been to test drive an EV and they tried to sell you an ICE car instead? Have you bought an EV from a dealer and found that you know 10 times more than the person on a fat commission selling you the car? Well, Motor Trader website says that needs to be the case out front and out the back in the workshop as well. 1 in 3 UK dealerships don't have a single EV trained technician in their workshops, but the majority now recognise the need to increase the number of EV trained technicians in their dealerships and train existing staff. Well, the Institutes of the Motor Industry has been campaigning for some time now for governments to give further backing and technical training for EVs. In July last year, as a percentage of technicians working on cars, less than 1% of car technicians knew how to deal with high voltage technology. They open the bonnet and they see those orange cables. That means high voltage, and they don't know what to do. Well, moving on, and Elon Musk occasionally likes to counter arguments that he's given about solar power being the future by reminding people the world is solar powered. The sun is the source of everything. So solar power is not an issue. Well, Scott Brusaw and his wife Julie have spent every day of the last 10 years developing solar roadways in the USA. And he says this, and I quote, "We signed with our first manufacturing contract in Dayton, Ohio, and they're going to be making the first, what he calls the SR4s. And we're in talks with our first manufacturing company in North Idaho," he says. "That means that we can get the price way down. Our ultimate goal is to have this at big box stores where homeowners can redo their driveways. Business people can redo their parking lots with solar roadways and solar parking lots to generate power, not only for EVs, but just generating power." Well, KREM says this, the Brusaws got to the next phase with the help of a record-setting crowdfunding campaign. 4 years ago, it raised more than $2.2 million. Well, after Indiegogo, credit card fees and other fees, the Brusaws got about $1.5 million before the tax man took a chunk of that, and that allowed them to buy a Sandpoint building to serve as the Solar Roadways R&D HQ. They've hired new employees. They've bought their first small-scale manufacturing equipment. We did report as well, by the way, a few weeks ago on the podcast, in China, they're playing around with solar roadways. I imagine the Chinese budget's slightly more than this husband and wife team from Ohio who are trying to do the same thing, but more power to them. And we'll keep an eye on that story. If they manage to do it, it'll be an amazing, amazing story. And finally, the BBC reports that a driver who moved into the passenger seat after putting his Tesla into autopilot, doing 40 miles an hour, has been banned from driving. Bhavesh Patel in Nottingham pleaded guilty to dangerous driving at court this week. A witness in a car next to him filmed him sitting in the passenger seat of his Tesla Model S P60 on the M1. It's a motorway here in the UK. A statement provided by Tesla said the autopilot is always intended to provide assistance to a fully attentive driver, not a driver who's moved to the passenger seat. What a wally. Who, why, how, the mind boggles. Who would even think it's a good idea? Unless it's someone who hears the term autopilot and, much like planes fly on autopilot, thought that it was going to do slightly more than it really does. Now, new Tesla owners are given a full briefing by Tesla about how to use the software. However, maybe he bought his car used and he just had this feature called Autopilot. I like how Nissan do it, and they call it their driving assistance. They make very clear this is not an automated driving function. Maybe it's just the name Autopilot. Maybe something a little less auto, if you know what I mean. Right, well, I'd love to spread the word about electric cars. If you can, please do share the podcast with somebody who might be interested. You can listen to every previous episode of the podcast. I leave them all on iTunes, on Google Play, if you prefer your Android, on Spotify, if you pay for your monthly subscription, as we do. We love our Spotify. We put the podcast on there as well. YouTube gets the audio because lots of people just like to listen to audio on YouTube. It's also on TuneIn, Stitcher, and now SoundCloud. Whoop, whoop. It's done. And the blog at evnewsdaily.com. Remember to subscribe. That means you haven't got to think about downloading the show each day, and it means you get it first and free and automatically. And it would mean a lot if you could take 2 minutes to rate and review wherever you get the podcast. Well, if you have an Amazon Echo, download the flash briefing, which is called EV News Daily, and come and say hi on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Just search for our socials. EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.